Hello, Kaleidoscope kids. I hope you are all having a fantastic week. Hard to believe it's already Tuesday. And can you believe we're on week 3 of our podcasting class? It's crazy how fast this is going. A couple of things that I wanted to talk about today. Today, our goal is going to be all about revision. We want to make sure that our rough draft is good to go, that we have all of the content of our podcast together and created so that next week we can go over tips and tricks for recording your podcast. And I'll actually have some time set aside for you to record and then submit your podcast as well. Okay, so today, again, all about revision. And there's a couple of things that I would like for you to look for. The first thing, number 1, is your podcast engaging? Is it going to make people want to listen? And once they listen, would they want to listen to a second episode? So we really want to try to make it engaging, have really cool facts and information, fun stories, a neat hook or two to kind of lead in would be great. So think as you're going through your draft, is it engaging? Is it the most engaging that you want for it to be? Number 2, is your podcast long enough? I would like ideally for your episode to be around 2 to 3 minutes minimum. It can definitely be longer. If you have more information, that's wonderful. Minimum, I'd like for it to be about 2 minutes. Do you have enough time, or do you have enough written to fill up that amount of time? If you don't, let's look this week at adding some more content so that we can make it a little bit longer. Okay, number 3, does your podcast showcase your personality? Does it show who you are as a person, what you're interested in, the things that maybe you're passionate about? If it doesn't, it would be great to add some of those details to make the podcast personable and also personal to yourself. Number 4, does your podcast stay on topic? Does it stay where you want it to stay, or does it go off topic, but maybe intentionally off topic? That might be okay. But if it doesn't do it intentionally and it starts talking about something else, completely unrelated, we probably need to take some of that information and maybe save it for another podcast or a future episode, but keep some of that information and maybe add to it a little bit more for the podcast that we have for this assignment. And number 5, for those of you who are writing a narrative story for your podcast, do you include dialogue? This is so important for podcasts that are narrative in nature, because then it's a lot more engaging. So if you're writing a narrative podcast, I want for you to look and see, does it include dialogue? Because that is a really important element. Okay, extra. If you are planning to have a guest speaker or include some sound effects or things like that, please make sure that you've set aside some time next week that you will be able to record those. Our goal for next week is to record the podcasts. So we want to make sure that if you're going to include sound effects, you know what those are. If you're going to use tools of some kind, that you make sure to either bring those into school or you bring your Chromebook home, maybe if you're going to do it at home. However it is, if you're going to include those, just make sure that you have those prepared and that you are ready for next week. All right. I hope that you all have an awesome week revising. Oh, one last thing. Don't forget to try reading your podcast aloud a couple of times before next week. Next week, I'll make a video with some tips and tricks for recording your podcast, but it's always good to have a little bit of extra practice in there. All right. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. And I hope that you have a fabulous week. I'll see you again next week.